So, see, I told you my mic is working in 60 seconds. Good afternoon, or if you're from Asia, good evening, or if you're from America, good morning. Welcome to our session about the countdown to decarbonizing your events. I'm your MC today. My name is Kai Hattendorf. I'm with UFI. Let me come up here. We have obviously a rockstar panel. I will introduce you briefly. I'll give you an opening question. We'll introduce you a little bit to the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So this will get very, very operational after around 20 minutes. We're setting the stage, and then we want you to ask what's most relevant for you. There will be a Slido question in the meantime, so get your phones. Don't put your phones too far away. Yeah? I think the slides will be shared afterwards, so you don't need to take pictures of all the slides, unless I ask you to take a picture of the slide. Okay? Cool. So, in the Knowledge Theater, we have Eloisa Urrutia, Head of Sustainability from meeting events company American Express Global Business Travel.
Thank you.
Helen Shepherd, traveling the world with me. We went to Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27 recently. Sustainability Director, RX Global. And the man who needs no introduction, Senthil Gopinath, CEO of ICA.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Now, we all know that the sustainability issue has moved from a nice-to-have tree-hugging thing to a business-critical, business mission-critical activity. Now, within the exhibition space at UFI, we say this is actually on the risk profile most important issue over the next 3 years to retain our license to operate. If we don't manage to be seen as part of the solution as an industry, a part of a solution to the climate crisis, but we are seen as a part of the problem, we are in hot water. So we need to get this right. So let's work on getting this right. I want to ask all of you three to set the stage a little bit about net zero and your motivations. And we agreed I'll give you 3 leading questions to deal with. What are the challenges that you see respectively around the climate crisis? What does your organization see as the business potential there and the business risks? Yeah, it's easy business and risk in 90 seconds. We want to be crisp and clear. And why have your respective organizations joined the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative? Take it away.
These are 3 very good questions. I'll try to answer in a couple of minutes. So first of all, as you said, sustainability has become a business imperative. It's in each and every conversation with clients, in the industry, with suppliers, with corporate stakeholders. I think the challenge we're in now is to bring all these conversations and strategies to tangible best practices and actually start really taking action on a business as usual level and reduce emissions. So emission reduction shouldn't be something extraordinary, but should be the norm. The positive side of the coin I see is the numbers show how, for instance, the companies reporting to the SBTi, Science-Based Targets Initiative, have exponentially grown in the past 4 years, multiplied by 10. And they represent an important piece of the most capitalized companies in the world with a big carbon footprint. And over 90% of them report Scope 3 emissions, so related to travel and meetings and events. So this is a very good trend.
That's all our customers.
Exactly. So, and another interesting data I would like to share is according to our American Express Global Meetings and Events forecast, 83% believe of meeting owners take sustainability into account when planning meetings and events. So the data is there, it's good, but we need to translate it into actions. Why have we, American Express Global Business Travel, signed this pledge? Well, I mean, we definitely, one of our priorities is to operate our business in the most sustainable manner possible. And obviously, we want all our ecosystem and our clients and suppliers to drive sustainability as well. And we think that a collaborative approach and a common framework is key to the industry development.
I've seen you nodding, Helen.
Yeah. Well, I share many of the same sentiments, but so I think
we recognise that the climate emergency is happening. We hear it from our investors. We're a publicly listed company. We hear it from our customers. We hear it from our employees as well, that they want us to take action on climate. But this taking action requires huge behavioural change, and I think that's one of the key challenges, is how do we enact this behavioural change among our customers and among our own employees as well. One of the opportunities I see for our business is that we as an industry are not the only industry facing the challenges of addressing climate, the climate crisis. We're operating events serving 40 plus industries like manufacturing, like packaging, like travel, meetings. And so we have an opportunity to be able to help educate and influence those sectors as they're navigating the climate crisis as well in the events that we're running for those shows. But in order to serve them, we also know we need to have our own house in order. So we know we need to make our events more sustainable. And I think that's the beauty of the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative, is that it provides this roadmap, what we need to do, and we're now trying to figure out the how. And to your point, collaboration, we know we can't do this on our own. It requires this massive multi-stakeholder collaboration partnerships, and so that's why we felt very strongly about committing to the pledge and being a key player in the initiative.
Thank you, Helen. And Senthil.
The ladies have said it already, Kai. I don't know what to say there.
Always let the members speak first.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think one important point is for ICA, or for we as the industry, me and Kai go a long way on this initiative. We never had one voice. We never had a single platform where we need to take this initiative forward. The buzzword sustainability has been living many, many years across the world, but always who's going to take the lead, who's going to do it, and different approach was taken about. So when we worked as associations, got together, we want to create this one voice under Joint Meetings Industry Council. That was the best moment which can benefit all of us, the entire community, with the corporate event sector, or like Helen mentioned, or even all of us, the association meeting sector. So every angle, the exhibition sector. So every angle can come together and work together to achieve our common objective. I think we never had that platform for many, many years or decades, if I may say. We all were running on our own pathways and on our own roads. So this was the initiative we were looking forward. And down the line, it goes to our communities across to our membership, because they all hear one voice, one parameter, one structure, one process in place. And it's UN recognized as well. So UNFCCC is part of aiding that along with the Joint Meeting Industry Council. So that's where we were lacking for many, many years. So I think, Kai, for us, this is a golden moment. And I think we all waited for this for many years. So now we have put the roadmap. We need to implement the process and achieve our objectives.
Thank you, Senthil. So you've heard a lot about the roadmap, and welcome to those of you who've joined us over the last minutes. Let me show you a little bit about net zero carbon. And I promise to stand over here so you all see the IBTM brand. Thank you for hosting us. We talked about climate change, and you will be familiar with this visualization that came out last year in the run-up to COP26. The blue years being cold years, the red years being hotter years. And you've seen the change. It's the best visualization of climate change that helped put the message across, really. So we're using it in many of the presentations. The background, you three already touched on this. So I'm just put it on a slide for reference for all of you to download it later. We have this global urge to accelerate the transition towards global net zero. And as I said, we as the events industry can and must play our part, like every sector, like every industry must do so. We can discuss whether we are an industry, right, Martin? We can discuss whether we are a sector, whether we are a meta-industry, but we are touching every industry, right? Every show we do, Helen, the industries you serve, all industries all around the world, Senthil, the communities you bring together, the meeting places for literally every topic on this planet. So we set up net zero carbon events last year. coming out of conversations with the Scottish Events Campus as host of COP26, looking to unite the industry, and we were ready in time for COP26 last year in Glasgow to present the pledge to say what it is we want to achieve. Now, this pledge is aligned with the targets of the Paris Climate Accord, so we didn't make up our own targets. We are aligning with what every other industry, with what all the nations in the world are trying to achieve, because this is the only way. If everybody gives themselves their own targets, you have a major mess, right? You're all events people. Try everybody play an event by different rules. It doesn't fly. The industry is uniting behind this, and this is amazing to see. We learned so much from working with the UN about making sure that we can be fully inclusive, and it is no entry to barrier, and that we share everything we create, and that every voice can come to the table and give input. So it is really become the most global, most inclusive industry activation ever we've managed as an industry. And that also goes with, first of all, you can just join the initiative as a supporter to get access to the materials when you're not ready to sign the pledge and commit to the targets. You don't have to pay a dime to do so, but the initiative relies on those who can to give some money. So I want to pay respect, because I have that as the last slide, to the players of the events industry ecosystem who are actually currently funding that work. If you don't see your name on that, talk to your boss. We don't accept more than 25,000 euro from a company per year, because we don't want single players to overly own the initiative. And there's the green level. If you're a smaller organizer, if you're a smaller player in the ecosystem, you can't pay a few thousand, you can give a few hundred. So it's an open invitation for everyone to be part. I want to RX, as we are at an RX event. Thank you for your support. But let's go back to where I was. So we started with 26 supporting organizations in September. Alex, I just saw you walking in, 460, 470 right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Alles, the Executive Director of Jamaica. How many? 480. Do I hear more than 480? Come on, by tonight we have 500. So more than 50 countries. They're event organizers, what we call operators, associations of the events industry, and partners. Partners can be destinations, travel accommodations, media consultants, etc. We brought the pledge to COP26. We brought the roadmap, the how will we achieve the pledge, to Sharm el-Sheikh. When was it? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
10 days ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Short while ago. And presented that there to the global community. We are now working on work streams, and I promise you this will get very, very practical after 20 minutes. So within 7 minutes, this is going to get really, really practical. The work streams are about what we do to implement the roadmap. The beauty about the roadmap is that we spent a lot of time making sure we find a way of phrasing and wording that is easy to understand for decision makers in our industry, and is precise enough for the specialists in the sustainability and climate conversation to actually work with it. So it has become a document. There's a 20-page summary, and there's the full document at 80 pages that is really, really worth your time, and it helps you to set out, to understand the journey that's ahead for all of us. Applicable and adaptable, a focus on the operators, because it's from the base of the events that we are scaling out to see who is in charge of what. We are recognizing that all around the world, different players are at different stages of development. That this event would be done differently in India, would be done different in North America, or wherever we would take such an event. And we have to take everyone from where they are. And their journey will start at many different points towards the same target. And the primary aim, this is all for the sheer purpose of making sure we can halve the greenhouse gas emissions of the events industry by 2030 and be full net zero carbon by 2050. The latest. I hear people, I don't sign the pledge because we want to be there by 2028. I say you sign the pledge and tell everyone to get there faster. So that 2050, again, is in line with the Paris Climate Accord. It's the up until target. You spoke about the need to bring in the whole ecosystem, and this is a very nice metaphor that points that out. So we are a huge ecosystem in our industry. Really a complex network of stakeholders and a deep supply chain, and we all need to work together. This really is, I grew up in the north next to the coast, this really is all hands on deck, as we say when when the storm comes in and we need to get the ship ready to face strong headwinds. We need to rethink how we do events, how we plan them, design them, and deliver them. So this is big. It will impact what we do. But the beauty is we can shape our own destiny here. We don't wait until someone tells us what to do, until we are regulated by governments or institutions. We shape our own path because we know best how to do this. So, tons of stuff and appendixes. I think we have 10 appendixes. So all these appendix lovers of you, we made it to J. Not too many documents have an appendix that goes to J. Yeah? The really, really detailed stuff. I'm not going to linger on this because I want to get to the work streams. See, 15 minutes in, it becomes really operational. These are the 8 topics that right now around the world, hundreds of colleagues are working on within the initiative. We have 5 priority action areas because we know that these are the areas where we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions directly as event organizers or indirectly as suppliers to event. The big fat elephant in the room is the travel piece. That's why we have travel and accommodation in there as well. This is a tricky one, and that's why Central has it, because ICA can handle that, because neither directly or indirectly can we influence how an attendee comes to an event. You all found your way to Barcelona. RX didn't tell you how to come to Barcelona, and RX is not controlling how you come to Barcelona. So the way you come to the show creates a huge part of that greenhouse gas emissions footprint of the show, but the poor organizer can't do anything about it. So that's why this conversation gets difficult if we don't include the industries left, right, and center. We need to talk to airlines, we need to talk to hospitality, and that's why it's so key that we have this seat at the table at the UN, where all these kind of industry-to-industry conversations are being facilitated. So, operation, we have venue energy, we have production and waste, we have food and food waste, we have logistics, and we have travel and accommodation. There are 3 transversal work streams that are not that practical, but so important. We need to agree on methodologies for measurement. If we want to halve something, we need to know what it is we want to halve and how we measure it. We need to talk about the role carbon offsetting has on that journey. It's a tricky one. You can technically, Reed could just offset all our trips here and the event would be carbon neutral, but the carbon is still up in the atmosphere. So that's why there's a lot of critical conversation around carbon offsetting. And we need to talk about reporting. How are we actually going to report the progress? How does every of the companies that signed the pledge report their progress towards halving greenhouse gas emissions? So I promised you this will get very practical. Can I have the Slido slide, please? And I want you to go to Slido, and I want you to tell us which of these topics is most important for you so that we can zoom in on that for the remainder of the session. I think you can pick one of them or all of them. I don't know if this, do we see the polling live or do we press a magic button later? So far, no one has voted. Nothing is important.
It's still scanning.
Still scanning.
Yeah.
Oh, suddenly, aha.
That.
It's an open race. Carbon offsetting taking the lead. Production waste, but closely followed by measurement, reporting, food and waste. Oh, carbon offsetting taking the lead. Measurement, come on. Any logistics people here? Reporting, travel. Yes, come on. Travel, measurement, carbon offsetting. Production and waste is coming up. I'll give you 15 more seconds. This is actually fun to watch.
This is, yeah.
I can ask my panelists, so what do you think will be top outside of travel?
I bet on travel and accommodation.
But you're travel, right?
Of course.
Central.
I'm on travel as well.
Travel, see? You get to answer a lot.
It's high as well. Yeah.
Measurement, production and waste. There we go.
Yeah, waste.
Yeah, waste.
Yes.
Measurement, of course, and waste, right?
So, thank you. So we will zoom in on these. Can I go back to the other presentation? We'll talk travel, measurement, production and waste, and then see how we get to offsetting and reporting. I'm going to keep this slide up. These are QR codes that take you directly to the key documents of the initiative. You can download, obviously, the link to the homepage, the link to the pledge itself, the link to the 20-page summary of the roadmap. And that is most key, so many companies said, I've signed the pledge, now what? So we made a document. I wanted this to be called, I've signed the pledge, now what? But they told me it has to be called Quick Guide to Getting Started. This is 20-page, essentially a full, ready handbook for you to take and start the journey towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, internal structures, how to set up reportings, what are the quick wins, what are the low-hanging fruits. We're going to keep that up. But we're going to talk travel. Senthil, travel and accommodation.
Yep. Difficult question, Kai. I think the most important, if you go through the roadmap, you clearly see there, travel and accommodation, like Kai mentioned, it's a big challenge. It's difficult, one of the biggest carbon emitters, but how do we control it? How do we measure it? How do we really take measurements to achieve what's our goal is? But the most important factor in the roadmap is that we become the influencers, all of us. So we create the knowledge, we create the awareness across in what we do. So how do you set off carbon emission set off you do when you travel? Even from an accommodation point of view, how does the hospitality sector becomes more, create all this initiative to achieve this goal? So fundamentally, the roadmap identifies the key part is the awareness point of view and how we can influence in one of the most difficult sector, travel and accommodation, to achieve our goals. So yes, we all know that it's a long road, one step at a time. We are all very clear when we put this initiative together in the last 18 months. We are here today. We have reached a roadmap, so that's a fantastic achievement. But having said that, measuring and setting off becomes a huge challenge. But the best part is, like we said, and like even Alex gave the numbers, 480 organizations who are in the hospitality, who does large amount of travel through our events and business event sector, has come forward to be part of the pledge. And now it's our turn for each one of us to look at the influencing factor among us. So within the community, we need to constantly influence so that we create the awareness. And we also look at the little investment possible, because we need to go back to our organization and our owners and talk to them and say, this initiative, to achieve this objective, we need financial support. So by creating that awareness, creating that influence, we can bring the awareness and the financial means so that I'm sure by 2050 we can get there.
Mm-hmm. And part of the travel and accommodation piece, for instance, also goes into the way we design events.
Absolutely.
And where we host events.
Yeah.
And whether it is next to a railway station or next to an airport.
Yeah.
So lots of factors will have a role to play there. Also infrastructure investments.
Yeah, if I may add on that,
convention
Kai,
centers going forward. It's
a very valid point. Even thinking as like from ICA's perspective, I've been talking to the other association colleagues as well. This needs to be part of the RFP as well, of all from the association community. So we are talking to the association community to get this pledge, this selection of, or designing the event to be part of the RFP process itself. So when the association community puts into the RFP, it influences the venues, it influences the service providers, it influences the catering organization. So everybody will have a part to play. So yeah, that's a starting point again.
Yeah. To those of you who are standing over there, we got seats up in the front. You don't have to stand in the back. But as you come late, you have to sit in the front. Travel.
Well, travel, totally agree on Senthil's comments. I think there's an important statement, and it's in your initial presentation. It's not about meeting or traveling less. It's about traveling smarter. So we know today when we talk about travel, obviously the biggest elephant in the room is the air travel. We know we don't have a short-term solution with travel, with air travel. The long-term solution is 100% sustainable aviation fuel. And that's where we're really making a lot of pressure and commitment in our industry, but where we suggest all the corporations, stakeholders should really invest on. So partner with airlines with sustainable aviation fuel, push the airlines to really commit to sustainable aviation fuel. For those of you who don't know, it's sustainable aviation fuel is made out of non-fossil origins, so crops, waste, and so on. It exists, the technology is there, but today it's not commercially available for all our commercial flights. So there needs to be more investment, more technology, more government support, and this is where we all come into play to promote that sustainable aviation fuel. In the short term, we definitely can or should apply best practices, like, as you said, choose destination with smarter and optimized routes, or select the airlines that have newer aircraft. So newer aircrafts can reduce the carbon emission of travel up to 20 and 30%. It's difficult. The reality is it's difficult to identify and select those airlines because there's not like an indicator, a metric, a standard. But that's, again, where we should work towards with the airlines to say, create a metric or a standard that says, hey, A, you're B, and you're C because of your ground operation, your aircrafts, and so on.
Plus, the one thing we all do as the events industry is we create the meeting places and the marketplaces for the specialists to come together and discuss synthetic aviation fuels, for instance. Waste.
Well, before we
Waste
go
or
on to
travel?
waste, could
Yeah.
I just say a few things on travel? So,
I'm sure you can, and I'm sure you will.
So I totally agree. I think promoting airlines that have these commitments, but also taking action on the commitments. I think, for example, this event, I travel from the airport. The local transport is important. So traveling from the airport to this venue is very easy. There was a coach provided. So there's this like shared mobility solution and to prevent multiple taxi journeys. So trying to encourage like pooling of travel. Another thing that you can look at is co-locating events. So, are you running an event that is actually complementary to another event in the same industry? Could you partner, going back to this collaboration, partner with competitors almost, to co-locate? So you're having to reduce the travel to a destination because, okay, you're running a show at the same time as another show, so people coming to that show only come to that destination once. And coming back to your point about measurement is quite challenging, but as organizers, we can at least start to make assumptions about how people are traveling to our events. Mm-hmm. We can look at registration data to make assumptions about the distances traveled, and we can then start to think about how do we manage that, how do we report that. So those are a few things I wanted to say on travel.
I want to encourage you. We got 17 minutes left. We want you to get as much out of this session as possible. There are mics roving around. If you want to share a comment, if you have a question like this gentleman here in the front, you see what happens. He gets to speak. Can we have a mic here, please? And while the mic is on its way, we fill the time. Measurement, right?
Yes.
You voted measurement up there. I'll measurement a little bit, and then I'll come to you. Yeah. So I'm glad I saw a guy walking in, because we need to define the way we measure so we can actually do that. And again, this is a major work stream that we are working on and we need to work on. I don't know the answer right now. We bring the experts together to help us find the best possible approach. And maybe Guy can say something on this. But please take the mic, stand up, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Jorge. I'm from Colombia. I was going to ask you, how does technology come into play as an alternative to meeting on site? Because, for example, I heard a couple of weeks ago that AMC brought out a project in which they started looking for events that wanted to be streamed live through their cinema locations throughout the U.S. as a project, So maybe that would be an alternative to, instead of traveling, maybe from New York to California or whatever, well, you can actually see the event in New York and in California be the live part. How does technology come into the whole net zero initiative?
We have an organizer.
Yeah, well, so I think the last few years have taught us that the technology cannot replace meeting in person. So there is real value in having a face-to-face event. Certainly for that networking, those connections that you're going to have with your customers, with your potential customers. But there definitely is a role for technology, and I think it depends on the type of event that you're running. So for educational events, so for situations like this, we could reach a much bigger audience by streaming events. And then thinking about actually coming to the production side of an event, so looking at how the opportunity for digital technology solutions to replace some of the printed material that we might bring into an event. You'll look at some of the amazing stands, the exhibitor stands that you have on site today, and there's some really clever use of digital to eliminate those waste points. So I think there's a couple of areas where technology really plays a key role, but I don't think it necessarily replaces that ability to meet in person.
Wouldn't that be like, in a way, our refusal for change? If for humans, it's a little bit hard to, look at our alternatives, and we're already used to doing things in a certain way.
Yeah.
When something else comes into the equation, we feel a little bit shaken. But wouldn't promoting these types of events be a way of actively finding a solution and really looking for
Yeah,
less
absolutely. And behavioural
emission?
change, like massive behavioural change is
Yeah.
required. So, it isn't going to be business as usual. We are going to have to change. And so, yeah, there is a role, I think, for technology.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's actually fascinating that your CEO comes from the data side.
Yeah, exactly.
Hugh Jones at Informa, the incoming CEO, comes from the data side. So we have a lot more digital impact in the boardroom that will filter through in the way we do events. But hey, you're here in person and not on screen. We got a question. Someone uses the digital tool. Could travel? I'll come and then look, that gentleman over there. He's friendly waving. Could travel agencies suggest lower emission routes, hotels, coaches to users proactively?
100% yes. So
Yes, that was a short
definitely.
question, short answer.
And that's thanks to technology, if
That's
I may
thanks.
add.
It's one of these examples where we can apply technology to make sure we can reduce greenhouse gases around the
Exactly.
physical event. And this is one of the pretty low-hanging fruits, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about measurement later and the different methodologies and how we need to align. But the
Are we?
important piece is really to have a common baseline to whatever you measure it with the same methodology. And technology will definitely help reducing emission, because you'll be able to, at pre-planning stages, whatever event or type of event you source and plan, to understand as the question says, so the lowest emitting routes, locations, and accommodation and meeting venues.
Meanwhile, Lucy found the next speaker. And ladies and gentlemen, Lucy put together the program here. Big hand to Lucy.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Aviv Jasman. I own a luxury travel company in Israel. I hope that I can inspire you. 4 years ago, we tried to be green. But we are one of the largest companies that provide helicopter tours. How can you be green when you're doing that? So we did something that right now we have about 300 trees that we planted. We decided that for every hour of a helicopter ride, we're planting a tree in the name of the people that paid for that flight. So 300 and something and counting.
Congratulations.
Growing. Yeah, every little makes a difference. It's this visible things that help us to relay the sense of action. I don't know to what degree it offsets all the helicopter flights, but it's about getting started and making all these moves that all add up. No move is too small, no move is too big. James is pointing at someone. I just Guy, do you want to say something? No, otherwise we just go on. You can raise your own hand if you don't need James to do that. If you carry on, yeah. So waste.
Yes.
We keep measurement to last. Waste.
Yeah, so I think a huge impact, and we know from the research that has been conducted both by UNIMEV and then also looking at the Finding the Future report on events in the US and Canada, waste is a big challenge for the industry. Waste associated with the production side of the event, so all the things that we're putting into our events like the stands, the carpets, the graphics, the signage, and then the waste that's also coming from food. What we need to do is think about, first of all, like how do we reduce what we're putting into our show without materially changing the look and feel and the customer experience? How can we reuse what's being put into our show? And then how do we recycle? And so applying that framework for the materials that we're bringing into the show can really reduce waste. And we're fortunate at RX that not only are we event organizers, we operate a venue in Vienna. We also have a stand building company, also in Austria. And I was there very recently talking to them about what can we learn from them in terms of on the production side. And they are really, really looking at reusable materials. They've managed to reduce waste by 98% in the stands and using modular systems, but very cleverly creating modular standardized systems that still create beautiful stands, because that's what customers want. On the catering side, a lot of the waste comes from either the food or the serving, the servingware, like the plates, the cutlery, the knives and forks. So how can you ensure that you're using simple things like glassware rather than paper cups or plastic cups? I've seen it here actually at a lot of the stands serving coffee in China. There's very, very little plastic at this show. I've noticed in just the few hours that I've been here. So it's making maybe these little changes that can have a big impact. And I know a lot of venues now are starting to partner with non-profits to be able to donate food that's not being used, can be then donated to local shelters. So there's lots of things that we can start to do, but it is around like this behavior change. And also, we can't boil the ocean. It's like trying out little things that that will have big impact.
If I may add, I 100% agree with what you said, but I'll be even more bold. I mean, we should definitely just avoid single-use plastic and disposable. So it's not a matter of, little things, or I believe it should really be, even if the regulations are not 100% there. We're seeing regulation, the EU plastic straw ban in the Netherlands, for instance, by 2024, it'll be forbidden to use any disposable plastic cups, packaging. This will come, but I mean, like single-use plastic are used for seconds before they are thrown away, and they never biodegrade. And I always share a quite impactful fact, but each human being, on average, inhales 5 grams of microplastic per week. So we eat a credit card per week, right? And this is the reality with single-use plastic. And on top of that, I'll just add to limit waste coming out, limit materials coming in. So just really use the essential, refuse materials coming in, and reuse, as you said. With the food waste is typically the biggest impact of waste at whatever event. So food management is very, very important. Just instead of, we're kind of used to, bigger portions, more food, buffets. Buffets have a waste of 40 to 50% on average. It's amazing. Can you imagine we throw 40% of what is presented? It's not only a matter of emissions, it's just a shame, right?
Yeah.
So we really have to manage this in a very strict way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and once the waste has left the kitchen, it cannot be then donated. So having that management.
So if you go to an exhibitor party and you're running out of food, that's good. right?
Exactly.
Because there was the right amount of food, everybody got something, and you don't
Well
have
said. Yeah.
half of that left over. We have a question over there. Who are you?
I'm Ala from Saudi Arabia.
Hello, welcome.
I just have a question on, are you applying an international standard like ISO 21121, which is specialized in sustainable events management?
The 2012 one,
Sure.
the ISO
The
2012
ISO.
one.
Well, so I think the different certification and management systems are very good to drive sustainability. ISO specifically is actually more a management system. So it doesn't tell you you're going to
How do you
reduce so and
implement?
so much percentage. And correct me if I'm wrong, but while as if you go, for instance, to specifically sustainable certification, like for the hotel and meeting venues, Green Globe, Green Key, and many others under GSTC, for instance, they tell you need to measure, you need to reduce, you need to do specific stuff. So it's a very good management certification, but it doesn't necessarily drive to emission reduction. But I'm not sure if some of my colleagues
Yep.
want to add.
Absolutely, yeah.
We got a voice over there. We got 5 minutes left, and I want to make the. We got a question over here. So we're running out of time. So
I will be quick.
You will be quick, and then I have a question here, and then we get to you.
Tony from ILA, we are the sustainability body for the events industry. I wanted to make a slight observation. I saw the stat come up, I think it was 57 or 58% of people in this room were saying that travel and accommodation is their biggest concern or where they see the biggest impact. Santil made the point about the opportunity of influence. And Helen, you made the point about the public transport that's available around IBTM. I guess it was just an observation, really, of this opportunity, this opportunist moment in this room, while we see the main concern being around travel to major events, which includes international travel, to talk about actually where that influence is and how we could encourage people to maybe think about train transport if they're coming from European destinations, for example, to IBTM, or, for example, promoting the public transport options within Barcelona, which is an amazing transport link. I just see this opportunity of talking about the influence within this space.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. And I took the metro from the airport. It's lovely. We have this question here. What does it take to certify an event as carbon neutral? Which ones have been truly carbon neutral?
That's a very good
You
point.
said you want to take that.
Yeah, so the definitions, carbon neutral, net zero, are always, what is carbon neutral, what is net zero? So net zero means you reduce the emission to, a very important extent. And potentially if you need to offset the remaining emission, you can do through, obviously, verifiable carbon. Carbon neutral means you reduce the emissions, not substantially, and then offset the rest of the emission, which is a great first step towards net zero. So we need to start somewhere, and we need to contemplate offsets, but this is another debate. But for me, the important element is not even the name you put to it, but the fact of reducing. So you really need to start by reducing and taking actions, policies, best practices to reduce the emissions. Otherwise, if we only offset, we're never going to have enough projects around the world, and it's really not the solution. So,
I kind of, just to add to that, like for me, my concern around carbon neutrality is that it can sometimes be seen as paying to pollute. So you're effectively saying, it's okay, I've made these emissions, I might have looked at reducing a little bit, but I'm going to buy a whole load of offsets and that makes it okay. And in fact, we haven't really talked about offsets, but the offsets that you can purchase, it's a whole minefield. You can purchase really good standard offsets and you can purchase some that are maybe not so good.
That's why we have a whole work stream
We really
on that.
want to focus on those offsets that really start to kind of remove carbon from the atmosphere. And that's why I think carbon neutrality absolutely is part of the journey to net zero, and it will play an important role. But without that like focus on reductions
Yeah.
and having a really strong reduction strategy, you need to be really careful, I think, when you're looking at carbon neutrality.
Yeah. You got the last question from the room. Martin, we won't discuss B Corp certifications. We can do that afterwards. We're running out of time for that. You got the last question.
Hi, I'm Alison Grinter from Aviation Media in the UK. I just wanted to check whether this information will be distributed to everybody that's coming to IBTM, because I think it's information that everybody should know about.
Let's ask the show team.
Lucy.
We'll take the question. Lucy says yes. So you all.
Is it being recorded? Is it going to be online?
I think it's being
Lucy says yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, knowing that we are being recorded, closing minute, at COP28 next year, November, in the UAE, where will we be as an industry? Closing statement, 15 seconds, last bowl, because there's the next session coming.
That's a very good point. Where I would like us all to be is having agreed, aligned, adopted a common framework. Because those companies, stakeholders who want to compromise, they know how to do it. So meaning we all speak the same language. When an event organizer asks a hotel if they're sustainable, the hotel knows what to answer. They'll answer ABC, because ABC are the 3 metrics or the 3 conditions we've agreed to in the framework. And not like today where you ask 25 questions, etc. So speak the same language, follow the same standard, and that all the practices that we've mentioned today, refusing to use plastic, the essentials are business as usual and not the exception. That's where I would like, the industry to be in a year time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think when we meet in COP28, know how we're going to measure what we're doing. And then in the next 12 months, finding opportunities for some really innovative partnerships, working with suppliers, with venues, really being brave about what we can try. It is a challenge because IBTM isn't running now until this time next year, but working with the show team to say, okay, well, what can we do now? What have we learned? And all the show teams, having that planning and just trying things out. Yeah, we don't need to wait. We've got to be brave and start testing things. So I think we'll have some good case studies.
Great.
With a virtually huge awareness, we would have created what we started doing it 18 months ago, Kai. And the implementation process would have started. So that would be, in my personal opinion, it's a great success that the industry has understood and everybody puts in their own roadmap in the organization, the commitment and dedication towards this effort. That's it will be in 28.
See, so it's quite some to-dos ahead. Thank you all for staying with us. There's Alexander Alles from Jamaica. If you have, stand up, please. If you have more questions about the initiative, he's your go-to person. We'll linger around to continue the conversation, but I think the RX team also wants you back on the show floor at some point. So have a great show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating this actively, and let's get this done. Thank you.